Okay, our fall tour, which if you missed it, was a great tour. I think Scott and Mike planned this out together, didn't they? Yeah, Scott Keble and Mike Kapinski. Neither one of them was here to take a bow, but they did just an outstanding job on this. Picked an awesome route. They didn't just Google up a straight line. They picked some great driving roads, picked some great destinations. We started out here at the Potawatomi Park, where we usually have our show. All the boys immediately went to their corner. All the girls immediately went to their corner. Not sure what that was about, but eventually we got back into our cars and drove. There we go. Oh. Go. Now we can.
Got tap dancers for a minute or something?
Do a little something. So the first part of it was on down the Abraham Lincoln Highway, which the significance of that for the moment was the anniversary of that highway.
Now, let me just grab it here.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we're back again. Yep, that one's next. Okay. So we got in the cars, we drove, eventually we came and found a parking spot, which is this part, right? Okay, just didn't, yeah. So we found ourselves a parking spot right in front of this no parking sign, of course. And the next one, the whole point of that was we stopped to see this restored antique gas station.
Oh, that's Rochelle, right? I believe it is.
I was just in the following the line. I don't remember which town it was in at that point. Next one. But it was really nice restored gas station. Whoever managed it, put it there. And then we got back on the road, and timing worked out real well too. I'm always nervous with these things. I figure, oh, the only fall color we're going to see is brown, but it worked out really nice this year. Next one. And we did some more driving. And some more driving. And eventually we pulled into Dixon next, which was where we stopped and visited the boyhood home of Ronald Reagan, which I'd never been there. It was a place I always wanted to go, because every time flying down the highway on the way to Fred's house, there you see the sign, this way to Ronald Reagan's boyhood home. Never had the occasion to go there. Glad I got to do it. Next one. Here we are heading up on that way. Next. Don't believe they actually owned this one particular Model T, but they had it on display there as the car that was like the one they had. Next. That's the home itself. And it's all restored, not the exact same furnishings, because when they moved out of this house, they put their stuff in storage, and it was unfortunately destroyed by a fire. But the Reagans worked with them, and they picked out stuff that was as close as they could find to restore it to the exact condition that it was in when the Reagans actually lived in it. Next. And it was a great old house, kind of small by today's standards, but it was neat to visit. The lady giving the tour had a lot of great stories to tell. And eventually we left Dixon. Stopped for some petrol, and then stopped for lunch. And it was another great place to eat. The food was real good, reasonably priced. And then we did more driving, and again, more great roads, lots of curves. lots of things to see that you don't normally see every day. Eventually on down the river and down through a lot of old towns. I forget the name of this state park, but
Yeah, Blackhawk.
Blackhawk, of course, that's why there's a Blackhawk Indian there, right? Next. Yeah, we stopped by the riverside in front of the state park there to stretch our legs, take some pictures, take some more pictures, and do some more driving. We were at 31 at that point. There we go. Great trip. It was a good time. So, coming up next, few things we want to talk about. I'll steal the parade one from you, Jeff. I'll steal the parade one from you, Jeff, if you don't mind. One of the things we're coming up with, Larry, who recently passed away, used to be the one that always organized the Swedish Day Parade. We're going to be doing that again this year. If you can make it out for that, it's a lot of fun as well. If you've got any children, grandchildren, it's a great event to bring them to. We go out to breakfast, have breakfast, go to the staging area, and you get to see the whole parade from the inside out. You got, like, the Jesse White tumblers will be there warming up and doing all their practice and stuff. All the Shriners are unpacking all their little cars and stuff. And it's just a great way to see something that you probably remember when you were a kid, seeing it from the side of the road, but now you get to see it all getting set up, and then you get to drive through it, which doesn't take that long, but that's fun as well because you're just coasting through the middle of the town, and you hear all the people on the side, oh, I didn't know they made those anymore, that kind of thing. So, yeah, if you could join us for the Swedish Day Parade, the announcement will be in the magazine. Love to have you there. Next one coming up is going to be, of course, the trip to Pontiac, which is going to turn out to be huge because now it's a Midwest Fiero event as well. And we're going to cover that in more detail next meeting, but hope you can make it for that one as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. I was part of that Swedish Day Parade a couple of years ago, and it's really a great time because you get to see the parade on the other side, being a participant, and just to see everyone just practicing and the cheerleaders and everything. And it's just a lot to see. You can walk around, people are real friendly. It's really a great show. And of course, you can be in the parade and after that happens. N.I.F.E activities. You always check the Fiero Focus for full details, but our next meeting is Saturday, April 26th. It's actually 5 weeks instead of 4 because of Easter weekend. We'll be here. Gary Watson will discuss using sculpted foam and lockable trunk components to customize the Fiero. Midwest Fiero Club's 2014 show circuit will begin the Bells Run event from May 29th to June 1st at Chula Vista Resort. Other stops include the show circuit, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, and the Tyler Shipman Memorial Show. Competition this year will be for the best interpretation of the 1986 GT. Now, in that vein, Kevin Lindemann from Minnesota, fiance, is making up quilts for each of the shows. Potholder size? I don't even know what the potholders are. And at the Fiorama, when they judge all of the Fieros that run the smaller events, it's going to be a queen-size Fiero quilt. So if you have an 86 GT, when it's not many of these shows, and if you're voted the best, then you get that. You're in competition for the larger quilt. Let's see, new business. Always keep your eye on FieroFocus.com website for the latest news about our club. Always patronize the 2014 key sponsors of Fiorama, the Fiero Store, VARG, Woody Buick GMC in Naperville, Fox Valley Buick GMC in St. Charles. Fiorama 2014 will take place on Sunday, September 7th. I'm going to pass around a volunteer sheet. If you have signed up, you don't have to re-sign. This is just people that haven't signed up. If you want to volunteer, volunteerism always makes for a very good show. The more people we have to help, the better the show is. About that, I'll be free if reasons for you around. See me after the meeting. Let me know what ideas you have for discussion topics for future club meetings or again. We are looking to build build an inventory of recorded how-to videos that you will watch and discuss during our action meetings. See me or Jim after the meeting to let me know if you're planning any maintenance on your Fiero that would be of interest followed by club members. I did one a few years ago about changing the valve cover. I'm sure you've seen the other ones that are on the website already. So anything you're going to be doing to your Fiero or on your own, we can possibly videotape it and get it up on our website. Ray Darrison is looking for ideas to cover his Fiero Focus article entitled Tech from Ray's Desk. Let me know if you have any ideas for Ray that we can put in the magazine. Any questions from you about the magazine, club, anything? Good, good. N.I.F.E membership. Right now we're at 329 with 62 that haven't renewed, but average. It's still early in the year. People are just starting to pull out their Fieros and you haven't renewed yet. But if you're going to renew as soon as possible. Let's keep those numbers up. And now, excuse me, Paul is going to discuss new products that he's found.
Well, the last meeting, some of you weren't at the last meeting, so I did bring along one of the items that we showed. This item is in the current March-April Fiero Focus write-up as a new product. So these are dew wipes that are now being made by an individual up in Minnesota. He really does a nice job. He sold a bunch of these things, and these look like a real quality product, and he's sold a lot of them by now. I'm going to pass this around to show you what to look for. The club owns a set of these right now. They are $95, including shipping. They come in a tube that can't be damaged, so you won't have any damage when you receive them. I'll pass around if anybody, we own one of these sets, so if anybody's interested in the set for their car, you can buy them from us for $95, same price you buy them from the source. We did pay $95 for a set, so I'll pass those around for you just to take a look at the quality of those.
I prefer not to look at it. I was working until 2 a.m. in the morning putting those in.
Okay. So installing them is a whole other matter. The easy part is buying them for $95, and then from then on, yeah, they feel pretty good. Yeah.
They're heavy duty.
They're heavy duty. Yeah. So hopefully, we did have someone down in Texas making these, and he's kind of been inconsistent. His name is DIY Stu. I'm sure you've heard of him. So he's been a little inconsistent on doing some of these things, and this is a quality source now. I think that will help us out. The second item is a new item from the Fiero store. These are interior door panels that support a 6-inch speaker in the panel. So these come in sets, and they do sell them. You can actually buy a speaker along with it for additional price, but this is the set that you get. I've got both of them here. I'm going to pass it around. You can take a look at the quality. It feels good. It looks good. I've looked at all of them. It's got all of the attachment points for all of the plastic pins that go into the door panel. Obviously, it has to be painted, covered, something to make it look a little nicer than just the black plastic, but you can use them as is. Without any problem, but I think it's a nice product. They sell for $199.95 a set of 2. If you buy speakers from the Fiero store, they're an extra $69.95. This is a standard 6-inch or 6.5-inch opening with the grill that you would buy with a speaker. So more than likely, go to Best Buy or someplace and get a speaker a lot less than $69.95, or at least a quality one that you want for your particular car. It gives you an opportunity for 2 more speakers, and again, an opportunity to do some trim work, perhaps that you want to do custom. You might take it someplace to a shop, have it covered partially in leather, paint part of it, do the whole thing in leather. So it looks like a nice product. So again, we have a set of these. The Fiero store sent us a set. They paid the shipping out. We'll ship them back if nobody's interested, but if anybody's interested, you can buy these for the $199.95, and there would be no shipping costs. It's a big box, so it's about $35 or $40. It's an oversized box to ship them. So probably, if somebody had an interest in something like this, before I send them back, let me know. And since they paid the shipping out, you could buy them for the $199.95, and we would send that on to the Fiero store. So I'll pass that around for you guys to kind of take a look at on the quality. And Mark, if you can grab the other one, maybe you can start it around from back there. Just pull it outside the end of the box, and we'll pass the other one around also. Maybe start it someplace in the back. So anyhow, new product. The Fiero store keeps coming up with some new stuff, just like Rodney does, and it's a support of the Fiero organization, the Fiero community. So maybe sometime after the meeting, I may ask you what you think of this product, because again, like anything else, the Fiero store, what the guys think. So we'll try to give them a little feedback on it. Okay, Mark.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
Nice job, nice presentation. You spoke in public before.
All right, today's meeting topics. First speaker is Mike Solewski. He's going to talk about plastic battery repair, panel repair, and painting tips for the Fiero. And our second speaker is Tom Lewinsky. He's a GM parts supplier. And as you can see on the sheet, he's going to discuss a number of items. We're going to start with Mark Solewski.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Mark Soboleski. I'm up from Wisconsin. Please don't hate me. Up Wisconsin. What I want to do a little bit today, we're going to cover a couple different things. I want to talk about just what you're going to want to do when you first pull your car out of the garage this year, and then try and fix up some of the little things that you find that go wrong with it. You know, we're all getting excited now to start pulling the cars out. We want to drive them. We just saw the fall color cruise from last year, and I'm ready to get mine on the road. But when you pull it out of the garage, you know, you might not want to just take off and drive. You want to clean it up first. Before I put mine away for the winter, I usually try and wax it, get things cleaned up, and get it set so we don't have anything really, really hard to do first thing in spring. But a good washing is important. You know, pull it out of the garage. Give her a good wash with a good car washing soap. Dishwashing detergent, you know, like Dawn or something like that, isn't the best thing to use. I used to use it all the time on my cars before I actually realized that it's kind of crummy for it. But I do use it before I do any paint work because it does take off a lot of the old wax, it takes off a lot of the oils, tree sap, and a lot of other garbage. So if you have something, you know, sticking to your paint, that's a nice way to clean it up. But if you're just washing, your everyday washing and waxing and everything else, start off with a good car wash soap, something that's made for automotive use. Each year, I buy a new sponge. Don't use an old sponge because sponges will collect dirt and slime and everything else. And over the course of the year, they actually wear out to the point where you're going to start scratching your paint. And then it's going to take a lot more work just to get it into drivable condition. So buy a new sponge, buy a new bucket, buy a new everything. Just start over fresh every year. This way you don't have any residue in the bucket, something that's sticking in there that's going to get stuck on your sponge and scratch your paint. If you do have scratched up paint or scuffed up paint, polishing compound is a nice thing to work with. And get rid of a lot of those scratches. If you have heavier scratches, then rubbing compound goes into it. The camera. But just a good cleaning, a good window wash, you know, interior cleaning, outside cleaning, everything that you want to do to just make the car in top-notch shape so you can drive comfortably and not damage the paint at all. If you've got other issues, well, then you start having to getting into something a little bit deeper. I've been doing a lot of car painting over the past 30 years. Car painting isn't the easiest thing to do on a Fiero because of the way it's all designed. The plastic panels do take a little bit of extra prep work over metal. There's some other things that you need to do. But touching up a car isn't that hard. If you've got stone chips or scratches or stuff like that, you can still touch it up like any other car. Biggest problem that we find that we can deal with are stone chips on the front nose. If you've got stone chips, little spots of black that are showing through where the paint is actually chipped off, you can purchase the touch-up paints from most of your auto parts stores. I think AutoZone still carries it. Advanced Auto does, O'Reilly's, they've got a little rack of paint colors. I don't know how close they get with the Fiero colors. Has anybody purchased anything from those stores?
The medium red is hard to find.
That one's hard. Do they have the stock colors? I know black and white are pretty simple.
Yeah.
That's easy. But do they have the standard red?
They probably have the bright red.
I think they do.
I've used some yellow touch-up, and it does not.
It's not close.
It's not very close.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Is that 87, cold 87? Do you know what the code is for that paint?
The red?
Yeah. Are you saying you have
I have the same color. It's like 907.
it's like a burgundy color?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I have.
87.
87.
It is 87. Okay.
Yeah, you say you have trouble getting that color, or?
Some of the colors are kind of unique to the Fiero. You don't have them available for other cars, and there are so many different variations of paint colors. Trying to get the right one isn't always feasible at the auto parts stores. They put out the most popular colors. You know, they may have 500 colors sitting there, but there's 1,500, 2,000 different colors available. If you don't have the right color available, you can always hit an automotive parts store. hop online, go in the yellow pages, whatever, look under your auto paint stores, find somebody close, and they can actually mix you up a small container of the paint that you need in your exact color. Now, when it comes to doing the touch-up itself, the metallic colors aren't going to match, no matter what happens, just because of the way the paint goes down. When you're dealing with solid colors, you know, the red and the yellow and the black and even the blue, well, the blue's got a lot of metallic, but the solid colors are pretty easy to do because you don't have the metallic content. When you spray metallic colors, the metallic particles lay down a certain way, but if you just touch a drop on there with a brush or something, it's not going to match. So don't expect it to be perfect, but it'll certainly be better than having a black spot on the front of your car. Or if you've got a scratch or a chip or something like that, you can do a little touch-up, a little preventative work, just to make it look halfway decent. And in some cases, you can do such a nice job that you're not worried about even going any further with it. So, but any auto paint store should be able to mix up a can of paint for you, just a small amount so it doesn't cost too much. A pint of paint is usually the smallest amount that you can buy if you have to spray something, and those colors can get up to about $100 for a pint of paint. It's not cheap, because painting cars nowadays is a whole lot more expensive than it used to be. If you do have the right color and you can get a nice coverage on there, you can also top it off with some clear, just like you would on spraying, or any other panel or something like that. These are base coat, clear coat colors. Putting the clear on there does protect it and seal that paint, so it won't suck up anything from the atmosphere. You can't put down just a base color of paint because it doesn't have the surface that will prevent it from oxidizing and separating off. So you have to put a clear on there, and they do sell that little touch-up bottle of clear that you can just touch, or even a little nail polisher will touch that up. Clear nail polish works out really well for chips, something like that. Any questions on any of that stuff?
You can just build it up, Mark. Like sometimes you get a gouge, right?
Yeah, if you get a
Keep going
gouge.
with the paint.
Okay, the best way to apply it, I got two different things. One is using a toothpick. If you've got just a small stone chip, something that's just the size of like a pencil eraser up to that large, a toothpick, drop it into your paint, get a good drip on there, and just hit the center of your spot, and the paint will just flow and kind of fill up that spot. You may have to do that 3 or 4 times just to be able to get enough thickness on there to get close to the level of what the rest of the body is, the paint on there, and then fill it in with the rest of the way with clear. If you really want to get creative, you can then wet sand and polish it a little bit and try and smooth it out, and in some cases you can actually fix it to the point where you don't even see it. Solid colors will do that, but you can't do that with metallics. A little bit of wet sanding and polishing will smooth out the paint and bring the surface down so you won't feel it. You may not be able to see it other than a discoloration. But that's getting a little bit more involved. And I don't know if anybody wants to do that, but it's always a challenge to try and get your car in perfect condition. But it's something that we can give it a shot. Wet sandpaper is available in multiple sizes. Once you've got your paint down there, let it dry for a few days. Wet sand with about 1,500 to 2,000 grit wet sandpaper. Smooth it out lightly, and then a rubbing compound and polishing compound on top of that. So if you want to fix, there's ways to do it, and you can try and do little stuff yourself. If you need something a little more involved, then you have to go to a professional, then you have to do some extra painting. Our cars are getting old, so we have a lot of different paint conditions that we have to deal with. If you've got something that's starting to discolor, if you're noticing the clear is starting to fog, it's turning white, there's really not a whole lot you can do with it, but a little bit of rubbing and polishing compound might actually take some of that out and bring back the luster of the paint, give it a little bit more shine, make it last a little bit longer before you actually have to have it repainted. If you do see the cloudiness in the paint, what's happening is the ultraviolet rays from the sun are actually separating the clear coat from the paint itself, the color coat. You can try and get it to not really bond, but just shine a little bit nicer for a little while with rubbing and polishing compound. But once you've got that cloudiness, it's never going to go away completely, and you do have a sign of paint failure when you are going to have repainted. So you might be able to save it for another season and then plan on having some paint work done at that point. If you've got cracking paint, peeling paint, anything like that, there's really not much that you can do as a backyard mechanic, we'll call it. But we try and do a little bit with polishing and rubbing compound, clean it up, polish it, make it look a little bit nicer. So, any questions on anything? Yes.
You know, you said clear coat is what's deteriorating,
Yes.
and is it like an acrylic kind of thing?
Well, back then they used a lacquer, and there was some basic urethanes out there depending on when it was sprayed. But they can be touched up with, as I say, you could spray some clear on there, but it's not going to hold. Once that paint starts to deteriorate, you need to strip it off of there, remove it, and then reapply the paint. But unfortunately, once that clear starts to pull apart, you actually damage the base color also. So you have to spray color and clear, and just do pretty much a complete repaint on that part.
Yeah, because that was my question, was
Yeah.
whether it's worthwhile to have the car clear coat.
No, probably
Hold
not.
on.
What'll happen normally is the very top of the base color, the part that you see, is never going to look as nice as it does when it was sprayed. Because it's deteriorating. Once that clear starts to come off of there, the UV rays get in there, and it actually starts to fade that color a lot faster. So if you just put, let's say you stripped off the clear somehow, you're going to damage the top color coat, and you're going to need to put down fresh color to make it look like it's supposed to. Because once those scratches are in the color, you'll see them through the clear.
But if you can get to the stage where the clear coat is still intact, but it's starting to fog, it won't, the new coat, the clear coat won't bond?
No, it might bond to that clear that's on top of there, but unfortunately, the clear that's still on the car isn't bonding to the color anymore, so you're putting new paint on top of bad old paint. And then when the rest of that starts to fail, it's going to take the new paint with it, it's all going to fall off. So,
Polymers can kind of blend, right?
right, these won't. They won't melt together like a lot of them will. You know, when you spray colors and you spray paint on a car, every color, every time you spray a layer of paint on there, it melts into the previous layer. But unfortunately, when it gets that old, it won't do that. It won't soften up the old paint enough to grab on. So we have to do a mechanical scratching or scuffing or sanding or whatever to get the new paint to actually stick and bond to the old paint. And when you sand the old paint, it's going to leave scratches, it's going to leave a mess, and it's just not going to look proper. You're going to see a lot of sanding scratches through the clear. So, sure, yeah.
Let's say you have a door and you have this cloudiness to it. Can you take and scratch the surface of the clear coat, throw paint on top of it, and then clear on top of the paint? Or must you go back down to the base?
If it's clouding, I suggest pulling all of the clear off of there, all the way to the edges, because it's starting to loosen up from the panel itself. If you just try and sand it down enough to get some new paint to stick on there, you still have that clear, that cloudy clear that's starting to detach from the original color. So you have a paint failure, the clear is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's not sealing the old color anymore. And if that starts to fall off in the future, well, the new paint that's on top of it will come with it. It's not going to stick anymore. You want to get down to a good layer of paint so the new paint will stick to the best possible surface that you've got. So the clouding clear is a failing clear, and it's no longer good paint. So you need to remove that completely. If the base color looks like it's good and it's attached and it's not cracking all over and it's not separating at all, you can just sand off the clear, but you will have to put down new color and then clear over that. So you will have to remove all that clear if it's starting to show deterioration.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what your opinion is on that Dr. Color chip.
On which one?
Dr. Color chip, when they advertise on TV, local TV.
I was going to ask that question. I want the one where you just pull the scratches off. Yeah.
Just close your eyes; it'll look just fine. It's a gimmick. There's a lot of gimmicks out there, like this color wax and stuff. You just wax it and it'll fill in the scratches. Well, it's a gimmick. Nothing really substitutes good sanding and painting and doing it. It might work for a little while. It might be worth a $20 investment if you want to keep your car looking decent for, say, one season, something like that. If you can get it to work You know, if you're looking to get through till the end of the year so you can do a full paint job over the course of the next winter, fine. You know, that might help. But overall, it's not going to last very long. But it's enough to get through a car show or two, something like that. So it's not the worst thing. Yeah. Somebody else?
I have the same question.
Oh. Some of these gimmicks, you know, like I said, it does help just extend what you've got. It's not going to fix it. It's a Band-Aid. It's a temporary solution to help make things, you know, to get past the next driving season. All right. Anything else? Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So probably the best thing to do is, it sounds like the only thing you do is take it off and put on new one on the panel.
If you've got a widespread problem, yeah. You've got paint that's failing.
I don't know if I have a widespread problem, but I envision what you're talking about because it's so thin. It's not like the old cars where you could just kind of like paint over them and match up the paint. And it seems to me it's more in depth than that because you got base coat and clear coat and all that.
Well, all the cars made within the last roughly 30 years are base clear.
That's right.
They can be blended. You can match them. You can do sections. You know, I've dealt with cars where, you know, the hood, the roof section, and the rear clip are all faded, and the clear is peeling off, but nothing on the sides. And I've been able to just, you know, repaint those upper sections, and you've got a car that's good as new. You don't need to repaint the whole thing. So depending on how widespread your damage is, you know, it might be something limited to half the car.
So I'm continuing with the questions here.
Sure.
So the best thing I understand is to actually tear the panels off and have it repainted that way?
Good question. Matter of debate, and you can take it both ways. I personally like to remove the panels when I paint a car, just because I like to be able to wrap the paint around and hide, you know, the edges on the inside. I take everything off so there's no paint lines, there's no tape lines, there's nothing. Everything gets painted. It also gives you the opportunity to clean up and just make sure that everything underneath is in good shape. If you got a little bit of rust scale or something, you can clean that up too. But that being said, there are painters out there that would prefer to leave the car completely intact, paint everything on the outside all at once after edging. You know, when you paint a standard car, a metal-bodied car, you normally paint your door jambs first, the edges of the hood, inside edges of the fenders, and all the other hidden spots. Then you go back and you mask off those edges, so when you spray the rest of the car, everything looks perfect. It all looks wonderful. Like I said, when doing the Fieros, I found that it's actually easier for me to take the car apart because I have nothing to mask off then. I feel I end up doing a better job. The car looks as nice as it does when it comes out of the factory because there's no tape lines, there's no edges. And I can make sure that all the fasteners are in the right place, everything is done properly, nothing's going to break off. It just, you know, for me, that's my preference. Other painters aren't going to do that.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
I'm sorry about this. This enlightens me. What is the proper way of redoing those panels? How do you get the old stuff off and put new on? Apply the new base coat?
Well, I prefer not to use any chemical strippers. Chemical strippers seem to soak into the material. They will leave residue, and then, you know, even months later, you can come back, you spray, and some of that stuff, if it's still in there, if it hasn't worked its way out, will cause problems, and you'll have problems with the paint. Hand sanding on a lot of edges, dual action orbital sanders, random orbital sanders, the regular DAs. You know, depending on what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to do a scuff job, you know, scuff up the paint so you can respray right over good surface paint. 320 grit is my preferred grit.
So you start with what grit and then you work to 320?
Again, it depends on what you're doing. Before paint, 320 to 400 is the final that I use before painting. Dry sanding or wet sanding, whatever your preference is. If you're looking to strip the car, 180 to 220 is a good sandpaper to use on the flat surfaces so you don't burn through. You hit edges and you can easily get in there, and of course if you hit the fiberglass, you'll start distorting your body lines and everything kind of looks goofy then once you have a nice shiny clear coat on there.
So you can use two epoxies for any repairs, right?
Yes. You can use that. You know, on some small stuff, I'll use standard Bondo plastic body filler. as long as it's on the fiberglass, or I should say the SMC panels. On the side panels, the fenders, the doors, the quarters, the two-part epoxy that stays a little bit flexible is preferred. Now I know N.I.F.E carries that. That's some pretty nice good stuff to work with. Bumper covers. If you need to get bumper covers stripped to get them looking good, I recommend setting them out to Keystone Automotive. Paul turned me onto that a number of years ago, and I didn't know about them. And I'll tell you what, those bumpers, when they finish with them, they come back to you in as new as condition as you can get. They strip the paint, they hot tank the part, and what they do is they dip it into a solution that removes all the paint, all the primers, and any filler that might be on there. And it also reforms the plastic into its original form. Yes, and then when they're finished with that part of it, they make sure that it's molded into its original shape, so you don't have the sagging issue. And a lot of the GTs have the sag on front of the hood where it just doesn't line up right and everything looks like it's all out of whack. Keystone will get that back into its original form, just like the factory. If there's any damage to the unit, they will repair small damage. Anything that's like major cracks or stretching of the cover and things like that, they can't fix that. They can only do so much. But they will tell you right off the bat whether they can do it or not when you bring it to them. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm from Milwaukee. I have a facility on the north side of Milwaukee that picks it up, but they send them down here to Chicago. So I don't know where your local Keystone guys are, but if you go on, just hit the internet, Keystone Automotive, and you can find your local dealer. Whoever will be able to take care of that for you. It normally costs, yes?
Mark, you can take it right to Keystone yourself, right into the sales area and drop them off.
Where is that?
Just on about 35th Street, about 2 miles east of Midway Airport.
There you go.
That's where Keystone's located. That's where they do the work. That's where you send your.
Okay, yeah.
And Mark, I had a GT notes done on one of my cars. Also, there's close to like Midway Airport,
Okay.
Field, Sock Park. People were great. They did a fantastic job.
Every one that I've had come back has been perfect. They've only rejected one that I've had, and it had a big crack in it. And I kind of figured it was junk to begin with, but we gave it a shot. We tried. But they do just an outstanding job. When that cover is painted and put back on the car, it is just perfect. It's wonderful. Yes.
Is there any filler that you could use for the scratch on that front bumper?
Yes. The two-part, it's an epoxy. It's a flexible body repair compound. N.I.F.E sells it.
Okay.
I know N.I.F.E carries it. There's other places that probably do, but it is just flexible body repair compound.
And that'll do it?
That'll do it. It'll do a real nice job too. I've never had anything separate. Once it's on there, it does grip really well. It sands real nice, and once you hit it with primer, you'll never tell it was there. Yeah, does a nice job. One of the problems that we have with bumper covers is over the years, of course, people bump into you. You get those surface cracks and everything else. The one thing that I don't think is getting repaired, even through Keystone, is some cracking around the directional openings. I've had some issues where there's some real small fractures in there, but the fracture is actually in the plastic, and if they don't see it, they won't fix it because it's so hidden. And in some cases that, if right in those areas, the rubber is actually really thick, or the material is thick enough where it kind of hides. There's so much pressure holding it in place, the crack doesn't show. But as soon as you hit it with paint, you can see just a hair of it. So I've had some issues where I spray some primer and there's still some plastic showing, some little small cracks. Then what I'll end up doing is just hitting the surface a little bit with a grinder and then use the flexible body filler just to fill it in and put a new surface on there. And as long as you don't smack into a pole or another parked car or something like that, you should be okay. So Keystone does a beautiful job, and normally they fix everything. They bend things, they move things, but every once in a while you'll catch something really, really small that they just didn't find. So there's ways to fix it. It's just a matter of keeping an eye on it as you're spraying primer and making sure that all the repairs are done. So, yes?
If you have like a little mark, like someone got a little aggressive with the buffer and just kind of like almost like a little burn mark like on a corner thing, is there anything to do with that?
If you're still in the clear and it hasn't gone through, there's a chance to do a light wet sand, or just with rubbing compound on a rag, just try and polish it out a little bit. Rubbing compound is much more coarse than polishing compound and will take off more material. Now, it takes a lot of work to actually use rubbing compound by hand, but you control exactly where the pressure is, you control how much, you're doing, how much you're pulling off. If you hit it with an electric, buffer or anything like that, you can easily burn through in a heartbeat. You just need to be real careful with that. But something like that, a little bit of rubbing compound first, try and get it off with that, and then polishing compound after that.
Nice.
If that doesn't do it, if you just can't get it off with the rubbing compound, then you might need a little bit of wet sandpaper. 1,500 grit, 1,500 to 2,000 is probably the best thing to work with. And then just sand it down. Got a good chance of hitting color though. And once you hit the color, then you've got a surface that needs to be protected. You can purchase spray, just a spray bomb clear from the auto parts stores. Just scuff up the surface a little bit with a Scotch-Brite. A lot of prep work is just making sure that your new paint is going to stick. A red Scotch-Brite that you can get from an auto parts store or N.I.F.E, they carry a lot of this stuff, is equivalent to about 320 grit sandpaper. So if you don't have the sandpaper handy, you can use a Scotch-Brite, and because if you have to buy sandpaper, you may have to buy a big stack of it. Even the 4 or 5 sheets from the hardware store gets to be about $10-12. A Scotch-Brite pad from N.I.F.E is going to cost you maybe $1.50, $2. Scotch-Brite pad, just enough to give it some scuff, and then just spray on your clear and let that dry. That'll give you the protection that you need. Yes?
Did you try the Sherwin-Williams automotive paint centers? They say they'll match your paint exactly. They'll give you cans of it.
Yes. Any automotive paint, any automotive paint store will be able to do that. I personally am a PPG fan. I've been using PPG for a lot of years. I worked at a Buick dealership for a while, and I was using Sherwin-Williams before that. I switched over to PPG just because that was what was available to me. Most of the paint stores will be able to take your color chip or your car, and if you've got a car that's faded in color, they can match that fade. Because I did a car once, and it was a car that had just the upper surfaces that had problems. I had to do the hood, the roof, and the rear clip, and the wing. The front of the car wasn't even close to being the original color. The back of the car was perfect. I sprayed the deck, I sprayed the wing, I sprayed the clip and the roof, and it was absolutely flawless. The front of the car, painted the hood, and I did all these separate, but the hood was like 4 shades off. This is a garage vehicle. Well, how does this happen? Well, it turned out that the vehicle was always backed into the garage. The garage door was always open. And the sun was fading the front of the car. So I actually had to go through and just mix a little bit of purple in there to get the proper color fade. Then it matched perfect. But it was kind of a challenge, like, okay, I didn't expect this, because I didn't know the history of where the car had been sitting. But they can match that at the paint store. And what they'll do is they'll come out to the car, and they've got a gun that will actually take, well, it doesn't really take a picture, but it identifies the color that you've got. It'll come up with its own chemical mixture. So you should get a color that matches exactly, including the fade. So if you have to do just one part, they can match it. Not too bad. But anyway, as for the types of paints too, I've been spraying polyurethane for a lot of years now. I don't spray lacquer anymore. I don't spray enamel anymore because the urethane is so much easier to work with. But it is rather dangerous to work with because the polyurethane is something you don't want to breathe in. You have to have charcoal respirators. You have to have the right protection. Cover your arms, cover your face, cover everything. You don't want this stuff getting absorbed into your skin. So if you do touch-up painting, you do need to be careful with that. Duplicolor is selling a lot of acrylic lacquer stuff through AutoZone and through Advanced and O'Reilly and stuff like that. But I don't know if they have the mixtures for our cars. And most paint stores will still mix lacquer. So if you really want to give it a shot, lacquer is real easy to spray. It just takes a lot of work to get the final sanding and the shine afterwards. And that's one of the reasons I don't go for it anymore. It's so much work to make it look good. But anyway, does that cover all your questions?
Yeah, for now.
The one question he didn't ask is how does he know when he gets through the clear to the base color?
Oh.
So that he can quit. And
that is a fabulous question.
Yeah, that's the question you didn't ask.
Yeah, how can you tell if you did? Okay, what ends up happening is when you're sanding and you're working with it, number one, you're going to start to see the actual color in the dust as you're sanding. when you're wet sanding or dry sanding, the clear comes out as white. And you'll see the white kind of like a little foamy thing. But as soon as you start to see a color coming through there, you hit it. You know you hit color at that point. And if you don't think you did, once it's dry, you will actually see a ring. You know, depending on how big of a spot you went through, you'll see a ring around the color, and it'll show. You can look at it, and you'll be able to tell at that point. But while you're sanding, you'll be able to tell by the color of the discharge, whatever's brushed off of it. What other question did you have?
No, maybe you better go over it.
All right. Anyway, if you guys are interested in trying to do some paint work on your own, I'm more than happy to give you advice. You know, I'll leave my information with the guys here, and you can get a hold of me somehow. And you know, call me up, drop me an email, you know, whatever. I'll be happy to talk you through some of this stuff and give you some advice on what's going on. Because everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different on, okay, how do we do this? How do we do that? I've had guys send me pictures of their cars and just the thing they're working on. It's like, what do I do with this? You know, okay, I'll give you a shot. Now, my methods are the way I do things. Every painter has their own style of doing things. Some guys like to do this first, some guys like to do this. Whatever it is, we're all looking for the same results. So I might give you some advice that another guy might give you a little bit different advice. You know, there's a lot of creativity out there, but we all want the same thing. We all want a perfect looking car. Anything else? All right. Like I said, I'll leave my information with the guys. If you guys have any questions, if you need anything from me in the future, feel free. Happy to take care of you. All righty? Thank you.
Next speaker is Tom Lewinsky, GM parts supplier. We'll talk about his OB installation, source of trade GM engines, GM parts availability, etc.
Okay, first thing you're going to notice is I'm not a public speaker.
I just came for the free T-shirts you're giving out.
Well, I had somebody pat Archie down on the way in just to make sure he didn't have any tomatoes in his pocket. So.
Just one of them. You'll look great after me.
You did a fantastic job.
You did a great job, Mark.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, I am Tom Rominsky. Been in the parts business since 1976. Currently working at Rock Chevrolet up in Grays Lake. Spent 32 of my first parts years over at Ladoff Chevrolet in Arlington Heights. Over the years, it's kind of been my job to doing everything from shipping, receiving, all the way up to parts manager. So kind of sourcing parts has always been my forte. I love doing it. I love getting a challenge of somebody saying, hey, I'm looking for this. I can't find it. I've called 10 different places. And I think, Art, you can attest to this. 10 minutes later, hey, I've got a source for you. You just got to know where to look and how to look. Next slide.
Well, I see that page every day.
Thank you very much.
That
Now
should be my
start buying
home
something,
page.
would you?
That should be my home page.
About 10 years ago, we created this website, and it was originally just for performance parts. Since then, I've added the dealership's parts inventory to it and the Chicago warehouse's inventory. So there's actually over 40,000 part numbers on this website. You can go ahead. As long as I was doing that, not that I wasn't busy enough, I always had the dream of having my own business. So I opened up my own AC Delco website. And on this one, actually, I've got a tab up here that says Fiero Parts. Now, unfortunately, it takes a long time to compile those parts. So you're not going to find anything for 88s. Yeah, give me some more sleepless nights and I'll be at it. But But what I am going to do for you today is I'm going to show you how to find those parts. So, next slide. A third website that I have is GM Tech Books. Unfortunately, at this point, I don't have any Fiero books on here. I think you guys can probably all find your Fiero books through the Fiero store and everywhere else, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. This site may be coming down soon. Go ahead.
Maybe what?
Maybe coming down.
Why?
I may combine it with another site. Over the years, selling the performance parts, I've been in business with a lot of the GM corporate people at GM Performance Division, so I've gotten to know them very well. Go ahead, next slide. Our major focus originally was selling engines, which we still do a lot of. And I know Archie recognizes this one.
I recognize every one of them things.
I've yet to see one of those in the Fiero.
Not yet.
That's your next.
No, I'm going to stay with that one down lower left corner. That's the one I like.
Next slide.
The Ramjet I've used.
Along with the engines, we've come up with brake kits for our Cobalt fans and just miscellaneous. Actually, this is a suspension package that we came up with for the Cobalts as well. Unfortunately, haven't got it into the Fiero stuff. I guess I got into it too late. Next slide. Like I was saying, I've been dealing with the GM people selling performance stuff. I do a lot of different shows. Used to do shows all over the country. They won't let us do that anymore. Top right one was a Raybestos deal, which kind of came in at the right time because I got to go visit the Raybestos warehouse, which was kind of an eye-opener, and we'll get into more of that in a little bit here. If you have any questions as we go along.
The top right hand, was that a commercial?
That was
Is that
actually...
Because I've seen that someplace before.
If you Google Raybestos or Hot Rod did a special on it.
It could have been a magazine.
They actually gave that car away. Somebody from Canada won that car, and it's actually for sale. That's the heard. And it's got an LSX 454 in it. Next to my car, that's the fastest car I've ever driven. Next slide. So, while I've been doing all these shows, me and my counterpart at work, we're always like, we need to do our own show car. You know, we sell these engines. It'd be great to have a car to go and say, hey, this is what we put it in. I've sold these things to people that put them in boats, planes, helicopters. Disney actually called me one year looking for 502 for a ride that they had. Didn't go through, but next slide. Here's some examples. That is actually a LS7 mounted in a helicopter. Another LS in an airplane.
That LS7 is mounted at an angle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they can do that because it's
dry
a dry zone.
Dry zone, yeah. Never thought about that.
Personally, I don't know that I'd get in it.
You just don't know if you'd allow it to take off with you in it.
Well, that could be. Yeah. So like I said, people have been putting these things in all kinds of strange things. The bottom right is somebody here's, that's my car, and Archie did the install. So go ahead, next slide. So this is what we selected for our show car. I commonly refer to this as my engine stand. Next slide. This is the way the car came right about a year ago. It had just 17,000 miles on it. Next slide. This is what we opted to put in it, the 430 horse LS3. Talking with Archie, he was kind of pushing the F46 speed, which I think was a great idea. Next slide. And these pictures here were actually taken by Archie. We let Archie install it for a couple of reasons. First reason is I can't weld. I've tried, I can't weld. I'm getting old, my knees don't work, I can't crawl underneath the car. I just, Archie, can you do it for me? He did a great job. He's got a great team. I don't know, but Archie does all day.
I just sit and play the computer, play video games.
Okay, next slide. A few more pictures at Archie's place there. Next slide. It's just amazing the job that they do. Once again, if you have any questions, Archie could probably even answer a couple of these questions if you have any solved
I just came
questions.
for the t-shirts now.
Okay, next slide. I'm sure, yes.
Yeah. In your application with the 6 feet,
Mm-hmm.
how did you find first gear?
How did I find first gear?
Yeah, too high, too low?
Personally, I think it's too low.
Okay.
I have spent a lot of time starting out in second gear.
You,
It depends on what I'm doing.
do you know of anybody that offers a different gear ratio?
I do not.
Complement that?
I do
better?
not.
Also, one more question, if I may. In the LS engine, do you know of any listing or brochure that shows you the difference between an LS1, LS3, LS2, LS7 engine by comparison of parts and maybe application?
Some of that I can help you with. Actually, there's a link on my own website that you can click on that goes through all the current LS engines. I think LS2 is probably about the oldest one that's in there, but it'll break down every component part.
Oh, okay.
If you wanted to see complete part listings for each engine.
Yeah, I was curious if there was I have an LS2, and is there an LS7 that could drop in?
Mm-hmm.
You know, both in installation.
Right, and I get a lot of those questions all the time, yes. LS2 to an LS7. Electronics are different, the wheeling system's different, but everything bolting up to it will bolt up.
But you can't take and modify an LS2 to make it an LS7.
No, probably not.
Okay.
Not easily anyways. You're going to spend as much money as if you were to
If
just
I
buy a
had
new
the
engine.
other engine.
Right.
Thank you.
Another thing about that is an LS7 puts out 505 horses
Yeah.
and sells for about $13,000, $14,000. You can buy an LS3 480 horse for $6,800.
Yeah.
Are you going to feel that 30
Direct-
horsepower difference?
direct change.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to change the oil system.
Every horsepower, right?
Yes.
Yes.
One of the mags within the last year, I think it was Engine Swaps by Popular Hot Rodding, had a complete listing of the differences on the LS engines, you know, as far as water pumps and heads and cams and all work.
I haven't seen that, but
Yeah.
sounds like a
They
good
have a
article.
complete listing on it.
More pictures taken from Archie.
Boy, that one with the wiring looks very terrible.
Well, someday when you finish the car, can you kind of hide all that stuff?
Yeah.
Next picture. You can go by this. We're done with that. So once again, this is our engine stand. We've got an actual LS3 to the right of it over there, but the car itself, we've had it at a couple of car shows, and it's kind of very unique. The first car I took it to was the Corvette Muscle Car Show this last fall. And it was kind of amazing. I had our trailer display and everything, and everybody'd be walking down the aisle and they'd catch the Fiero and they start laughing. And they go over and they're amazed at the combination. It's an eye catcher.
It's fun to take them to Corvette shows, that's all.
Yeah.
I've seen it a million times. That fest, man, they make faces coming down the aisle and then they walk over and look at what they
Yeah,
saw.
amazing. Next slide. Which brings us back to OEM Parts Depot, which is AC Delco parts all along. Next slide. It's been brought up in a couple other meetings, and people have talked about what parts can we still get for our car that are original parts. AC Delco makes a lot of stuff, and we're going to get into a little bit of how you can find these parts. you'll kind of see on here, there's two sets of numbers here. This one here will be the AC Delco number. This will be the GM part number. These parts are still available. Go ahead. Next slide. There is a link on my website that brings you to this. This is an AC Delco website where you can actually catalog your parts. Just click the year, the model, goes through. Next slide. Or on my website, you can click Fiero parts as well. Next slide. This is within my website. You can kind of click on any of these, and these will all be parts that are, for the most part, the last time I checked, are still available through AC Delco. Next slide. Question I get almost every single day at work is, well, I can get it cheaper at GM Parts Direct. Go for it. I'd be more than happy to price match GM Parts Direct. What they do, and you can kind of see by the pricing here, they're showing that the part is $245. Next slide. I sell it for $255. Next slide. They only want $63 to ship it. Next slide. I'm getting $16 to ship it. So the final price, that's the name of the game. Shop, shop, shop. Go ahead and change the screen. These are a couple of samples of parts that GM has discontinued, but they're still available through AC Delco. So it's one of those things you're going to have to, if you're looking for something for your car, go to the AC Delco website. I've got a sheet here for everybody today that's got some other websites. Rebestas, N.I.F.E, they all have these online parts catalogs that if you go to them, you'll be amazed at what you can find for your car. So go ahead, next slide. Sometimes when I answer the phone and I kind of say OEM parts, or I might say, these are all businesses I'm kind of working on, or I do, so. The Grace Monkey Products is my company. Next slide. Probably the hardest part, or maybe it's not the hardest part, is actually getting the original part number. So if you have access to a part in this catalog, that's great. If you don't, I actually just found this one the other day. This one here is AC Delco Parts Catalog. I'm sorry, that's not the one I found. Yeah, it is. You can actually download one of these catalogs onto your computer so you can look up parts.
The first catalog I bought.
I see him on eBay. I just so happened one of the guys I work with used to be a big Pontiac freak, and he had every Pontiac catalog, and I borrowed one from him. Once again, once you find your part number, you can come to OEM Parts Depot, and I've got on my screen, I didn't put a slide up here, I apologize, but when you go to OEM Parts Depot, if you put the part number in, it'll come back and it'll tell you the GM number and the AC Delco number side by side, so you can search for it. So once again, shop, 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 because I'm not always going to be the best price. These other places have awesome deals. Amazon offers free shipping if you can wait a few days on a lot of stuff. Next slide. I also have a Catherine update. While doing my shows, I met up with Catherine and her dad last week. Next slide. We were up at the Detroit Autorama. Catherine and I came to the conclusion it wasn't going to be a car show unless there was a Fiero there. We did find one. So, needless to say, next slide. Catherine says hi to everybody here. She's like all of us. She's waiting for this weather to break so that she can start on her car again. She's got the exhaust system welded back together. She's about to tackle the dew strips. We had a chuckle about that because she was kind of thinking, it's not going to be a big deal. And she'll be prepping for a paint job. Any questions? Yes.
So, is AC Delco and GM two different things, or I always thought they were?
I don't know the official. It seemed to me at one time AC Delco was owned by GM or a division of. I don't know that that's a fact anymore, but any suspension part, electronics, or wearable part on your car, AC Delco makes it. All the motors, switches, shocks, wiper blades. Just about anything you're going to need for your car maintenance-wise, AC Delco supplies it. I was talking about Raybestos earlier. I had the opportunity of going into Raybestos warehouse, and there was a long conveyor belt of white boxes coming down, and there were a crew that had stickers that said AC Delco that were sticking to AC Delco. Right next to that box was a N.I.F.E box. Next to that box was an AutoZone box. You're getting premium parts on a lot of the stuff from AutoZone, N.I.F.E, and all the other stores. Once again, shop. Get if they offer 2 grades of it, get the better grade. But a lot of the stuff is being made by Raybestos and what have you. Somebody was asking me the other day about rebuilding kits for the rear calipers. They are discontinued from GM, from AC Delco, but I found them on the Raybestos site. So there is stuff out there. Yes?
Question, like especially when you're dealing with like Amazon or eBay sellers, how do you make sure you're not getting counterfeit parts? Like, I mean, it looks, it's an AC Delco box, you know.
AC Delco just kind of worked out a deal with Amazon, and it's kind of killed my business because they're giving the stuff away and we're offering free shipping, which I can't do. But the AC Delco stuff, if it's through Amazon, it's coming from AC Delco. The eBay stuff, try it. Yeah, you know, and I've seen over the years a lot of memos come out from GM about counterfeiting, and they'll give you box samples where the AC Delco logo just doesn't look right. It's faded out, or it's blurry, or it's counterfeit. If it doesn't look, I mean, the packaging should look perfect. Any other questions? Yes?
What's the I guess, understanding the correlation? You work for Rock Chevrolet, but all these websites you're just running on your own? Is that?
Right. The Crate Engine Depot actually started at Ladoff while I was there, and I kept getting people from all the Cobalt GM Sport Compact world kept asking me about all this stuff. Well, AC Delco makes a lot of the suspension stuff and everything already, so we really didn't have it on the Crate Engine Depot site, so it was suggested to me, hey, as long as you're doing this, why don't you set yourself up? And I took that advice and I set up my own site.
So you're taking the orders off of, let's say, the OEM auto, the parts website, and then you're just placing the order through like Rock Chevrolet, but then
I actually have AC Delco sources,
okay.
WDs that I've been working with. I have one in Florida, I've got one in Michigan, one in Minnesota, and one on the south side of the city. So I've got a lot of different sources I can pull from. So it's got absolutely nothing to do with ordering through Rock Chevrolet. The other thing is with AC Delco is, and you saw those part numbers that were AC Delco and GM. The GM cost on something may be $10. I can get it through AC Delco for maybe $7. It's kind of a stupid thing, but it's.
You're just not paid for the GM logo.
No, well, it comes in the same
still
box.
the same box.
It's the same box. And in the dealer world, it's always been kind of a game, because when you come in for a brake job on your car, if you're putting genuine GM parts on your car, they may be not getting it from GM. They may be getting it from the AC Delco warehouse. They make a couple extra bucks on the part, but that's where I can save. Sure.
Yeah, I have a question. Going all over the internet, looking at my Fiero, believe me, I do like my 2.8 in there, but if I did decide to go to a swap, and I have an automatic, I think it's 125, is that right? The automatic transmission. What would be the best engine swap for my vehicle?
Archie's the expert.
Archie's the expert?
No. You got to beef up that transmission. The transmission in your car is 25 years old now. And, it's probably pretty much worn out already, or it's got its share. Yeah. And, you need, if you're going to put that with double the power or triple the power, you're going to need to take it to the same guy you would take the transmission out of a Chevette that you're doing the same thing to. You'd want to beef it up.
Yeah, how about the 3.8?
Same thing goes for any engine swap. If you're increasing the power, you're going to increase the load on the transmission. 3800 doesn't make as much, would not increase it as much, but it's still going to be a swap. You're still going to need to rebuild it. Those transmissions were made to handle the engines they came with, not really a whole lot more.
And not over 55 miles an hour. And not over 55 miles an hour.
Yeah, and plus the transmission's 25 years old now, so it's not as good as it was, factory new either.
Okay.
Back in the day, when I started doing Fieros 27 years ago, and back in the day, I put a few V8s in using stock Fiero automatic transmissions, and they worked pretty good for a while. 6 months, a year or so down the road, you may end up having to work on it, but it was quick and easy. But you need to beef it up just like you would any other car.
I brought in performance parts catalogs. I've got one for everybody here. They're over on the table. I've got business cards if you want to contact me. Best way to get me is email. And it's not unusual for me to be answering emails 10 o'clock on a Sunday evening. That's kind of what I do.
Join the club.
Yeah. But thank you. Appreciate it.
Good job. Good job.
I've got a door prize ticket with a number of door prizes.
Everybody get a door prize ticket? Yeah.
No.
Green, everybody got two?
You didn't give me one. You walked right by me on purpose. I know how you are.